Well, good morning again, everybody. So glad that you're here with us for week 2 of our series, The Art of Us. How cool is it, you guys, like all the artwork up on the stage? Can we give it up for all of our local artists? They did that. And that video that we just watched, really quick collage making video, we didn't buy that from somebody. We actually have an artist in our church named Alan Hevelone who actually made this graphic, and he made it physically. This is a photograph of what he did. That was his hand in the video, which is so stinking cool. I love being surrounded by so many incredibly creative people, and to sort of set the stage for what we're talking about in this series, which is the art of us, the art of healthy relationships. This series is wrapped all into our vision for 2026 as a church to help each other thrive. We put it this way, our vision as a church overall is to partner with God as he brings the up there down here, but thriving makes this really practical, puts it in our bones, in our hands and feet, and how we walk and live in the world. We say thrive is the up there breaking into our everyday life, moving us from surviving to flourishing. Like God wants you to flourish in your life. He wants you to thrive in his kingdom way as you live your Monday through Friday, your weekends, your Sundays as well. And that's why we're talking about relationships in this series, because this is the reality that Nico shared last week. And this is why it's so important, that the quality of your life is deeply connected to the quality of your relationships. We often get this mixed up and messed up because we think the quality of our life has to do with the money that's coming into our bank account. We think that the quality of our life has to do with the comforts that we have and that we get to experience, and us staying away from hard things. But across the board, across multiple different disciplines, studies and researchers show that the quality of our life is actually deeply connected to the quality of our relationships. Do we have life-giving, healthy relationships? That's where true satisfaction with our life actually comes from. And that's how we take a step forward in thriving. And we're talking about relationships under like this angle and under this lens of art, because this is another thing that's so true that Nico shared last week. That relationships are not a problem you solve. They're not math. There's not an equation to it. Relationships are an art you learn. Because you are complicated, and your kids are complicated because of you, and your partner is complicated. Because of this, we can't just do a paint by numbers. We can't just put in some numbers into an equation so that we win in our relationships. We have to practice in our relationships. We need to learn the art and the practices that lead to healthy relationships. And we need to continually do this. This is what artists do, is they tweak their art and they add to their art. We need to continue working on it. Through now almost 20 years of being a pastor and serving in the local church and counseling people and couples and having my own relationships that have now grown and developed, I really have come to believe this reality right here. That if you stop working on your relationships, ultimately your relationships will stop working. You can't just set it into cruise control. You can't just go through without ever doing any maintenance or having an oil change. You have to be working on your relationships continually so that they continue to work throughout your life. And I was thinking about this through the realm of art and artists this last week. Here's one of my very favorite art pieces. This is Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. Anybody else love this piece? I just think this is so beautiful. Always draws my eyes to it. I have a print of it at home. I love it so much. And it just draws me to it. It's 1889, Vincent van Gogh, maybe his most famous work of art. But I love the painting, but I love the story behind the painting almost more. See, Vincent van Gogh, at one point, before he even picked up a paintbrush, he wanted to be a minister. He wanted to share the gospel with people in his community. And so he got kind of a part-time pastorate job. But after a while, he was doing things in an unconventional way, and he didn't have high attendance on Sundays. And so the leaders of the institutional church said, you should find a different line of work. Have you thought about painting? Whatever that might be. But he was sort of kicked out of doing ministry. And it messed with him. It messed with his faith. It messed with the way he saw the world because of how he was treated cruelly by leaders in the church. And there's an interesting detail that is in The Starry Night that I don't think is an accident at all. You see, in all the homes in the village, you see lights on in the windows of all of these homes. The only building in Van Gogh's Starry Night you don't see light in is the church. And I think Van Gogh is saying a couple things here. He's saying here, the one place that's supposed to hold the light of the world, the lights have gone out because there's been cruelty and there's been exclusion, and I've been kicked out of what I was called to do. I think on one level he's saying that, but he's also saying he sees things differently now, that the light of the world is not contained to the four walls of a church building, but the light of the world is in every home, around tables, and in ordinary but sacred moments of life around the village, right? And I love what that teaches us, because it challenges me as a leader in an institutional church, but it also beckons me to see God being more creative than I give him credit for, and to help people share that light of Jesus in their homes and around tables, not just on Sunday mornings. Now, I love that story. I love this painting and the story tied to it, but just for a moment, imagine that Van Gogh, instead of doing these brilliant blues and yellows and all the pictures of lights in buildings and out of the church. Imagine there's nothing like that, but he just stopped halfway through and he just sort of sketched it out in black and white, and it looked like this. It just doesn't hit the same way, right? If there's no story with the lights there, I mean, there's cool swirls and it's pretty good pencil work, I guess, and the tracing and the shadowing and like everything that goes with it, but it just doesn't hit the same way. There's a lost power in it because he stopped working on it, if he would stop working on it, right? In a more ridiculous way, can you imagine if Leonardo da Vinci was doing Mona Lisa and he just sort of stopped halfway? And of course, this is what his original handwriting looked like in English. Lunch break, we'll finish tomorrow, kind of thing. Or maybe the most ridiculous example of this would be the David sculpture, Michelangelo's David sculpture, you know, the one where he's not wearing any pants, and it's always the awkward conversations you have to have with kids when they're learning about art. But imagine that the model who stood in for this, he didn't get comfortable enough with Michelangelo for this, so they stopped the sculpture and it stopped like this. I'd say all these awkward conversations you'd be saved by if but like you don't get the full effect. Oh, I don't like saying that out loud. The full effect of the David sculpture in that way. Let's take that off the screen. But you guys, in the same way, like our relationships, like we've got to be working on them. We've got to keep going towards health in them. If we stop halfway, we're left with less than the full effect and the full goal of our relationships. And last week, Nico, our Next Gen pastor, did a great job kicking things off, talking about our connections and how we need to be vulnerable and really share what's going on underneath the hood so that we connect with the people that matter the most to us. Today, we're going to talk about growing in the art of communication and our communication in our relationships. And maybe the undersold part of communication that is so vital to the art of us, and that's listening to each other. So we're going to talk about communication and listening to each other. You know, miscommunication causes a ton of problems, not only in relationships, but it causes tons of problems in business and in government programs. I know there's been all this amazing stuff talked about with NASA over the last couple of weeks with Artemis and going around the moon and coming back and everything. But in 1999, there was another NASA mission that led to a big disaster. This is in 1999, this is the Mars Climate Orbiter here. It was a drone that was going to Mars to get information about Mars, and everything was going great until the orbiter got to Mars, and then it sort of crashed into the atmosphere, and everything was lost. All the data it was collecting, the hardware, this massive investment of $125 million was all destroyed and all lost. And it was all because of a miscommunication. The NASA team, half of them were using metric to measure the distance from the atmosphere. The other half was using imperial. You know, the real smart way that we do things around here, right? But like, because of a miscommunication of the units of measurement, everything was lost, and there was a huge loss to us, the taxpayers, and to us of not getting the information about what was really going on Mars' surface and around the atmosphere of Mars. Miscommunication, it causes a bunch of problems, and it is a source of a big frustration for parents, right? When you can't communicate with your kids, or when your kids are moving away from you. Many of you guys know we have 3 littles in our house, 7, 5, and almost 2. And it's just like some of the biggest frustration when you're like trying to talk to them and try to say something to them, but they are just like there, but they're not there. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Like when Jack, our oldest, was little, it was right when Disney Plus released Hamilton, the musical, and it was sort of on in our house all the time, and Jack would just be glued to it. Judge me as a parent all you want, but he would just be glued to the TV to where like I could not get him to break away from the TV unless I paused the king in Hamilton. And for the longest time, I thought Jack would just like be singing about me all the time. He loved me so much, he would just go around going, da, 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 da. I thought it was da, da. Talk about a hit to the pride there for sure, because he was just singing along with Hamilton, but I just couldn't break through. And other times, like you can't get your kids to like stop talking to you even though they have nothing to say. Our 5-year-old Thomas, he loves to have a conversation with me right now, and he loves to have no idea what he wants to say. You guys know this if you have little kids, like they'll be talking to you and be like, hey dad, have you ever, cut to black 4 minutes later. Have you ever, do you know that? And just like nothing actually comes out in the story. And I'm trying to hang in there as long as I can to be attentive and listen and not like grab my phone to just try to escape the awkwardness of the moment. And I find myself being a little bit like this Julia Roberts meme a little bit when your kids keep telling a story and it won't end. Like you have those crazy eyes. Is this ever going to end? I can't deal with this anymore. And it's frustrating talking to your kids and trying to have conversations with them, but they're not really there. They're not really listening. I mean, on top of this, you guys, human communication is really complicated. The way that we're wired to communicate is extremely complicated. Do you know studies show that only 7% of our communication to one another are the actual words that we say? Only 7%, 93%, the rest of it is different. 38% of our communication is our tone of voice and how we say words. That's why, like, you can say, yeesh, I'm sorry. You go, yeesh, I'm sorry. It, like, changes everything. The tone of our voice gets it. That's like in your marriage, if your partner ever says, I'm fine, the only thing you should be sure of is that things are not fine, they are not fine, and you are definitely not fine, because the tone of voice means so much. 38% is the tone of voice. 55%, over half of our communication to each other, is our body language. That's why you know something's wrong if people are Charlie Browning around. You know something is wrong if they give you that side eye of death. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The Samuel L. Jackson side eye? Like the fury of the Lord's going to come on you. They don't need to say anything. You just know that you're in big trouble. Or that look from the mom look. You know, I don't know if you guys knew this, but when you become a mother, you receive this look that says, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. But in reality, you are a wicked tornado of both of those things at the same time. And your kids and your spouse, they know that you are in big trouble because of the look. So much of our communication is our body language. And here's the reality, guys. Because communication is complicated, we know all the damage it can do in so many different ways. We all need to learn the art of communicating to each other better. We know this. We know that we need to grow in our communication skills, our listening skills, so that we can connect with our most valuable relationships better and better. But here's a big problem. We'd rather talk than listen. We love talking and we hate listening. It's so much easier to like talk than it is to actually lock in and hone in on what somebody else is saying. One of the writers of The Simpsons, Rob Lazanik, where I always go for the deepest wisdom, he says this: talking is like drinking a great Cabernet. Listening is like doing squats. Listening is like reading a corporate report. Talking is like eating a cinnamon roll. This idea that like we don't like slowing down and actually listening. We'd much rather do all the talking. And guess what? In science, it reinforces this idea. There's a group at Harvard University of Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience Lab. They will do brain scans on people to see different areas of your brain, to see what lights up, where the activity is when there's certain activities going on. And what's interesting is that when you are talking about yourself, when you talk about yourself and what you think and what your experience is, you know what lights up on your brain? The part of your brain that lights up when you have a delicious Dan's donut, when you have a bite of a perfectly cooked filet mignon, when you have your greatest comfort food, that part of your brain lights up. When you talk about yourself, it's the same part of your brain that if you don't do this at home, actually don't do this at all, but you take a hit of cocaine, that's what lights up, is when you talk about yourself. The advice you got at church on Sunday morning. Let the record show, if we're on Facebook yet or whatever, don't do it at home, don't do it anytime. But anyway, that's what happens. It's when you talk about yourself. We love talking about ourselves, but listening to others, I don't know. I know I should, but it's no fun. And there's something underneath the surface that happens in our relationships, in the relationships that matter the most to you, in the relationships that matter the most to me. When we don't listen, it breaks down this bond of trust. In other words, being unheard feels like we're unknown. When we're not being listened to and they're not really honing in on what we're saying and hearing us, feels like we're unknown. You might experience this at work where you feel like you're just a cog in the system and every bit of advice that you have just goes in one ear and out the other. You might experience this in your homes, with your partner, with your spouse, with your kids, to where you feel like they're just pulling away. They're not listening to you at all. And why do I even talk? Because all they hear is the Charlie Brown voice. But you feel unknown. And this is insidious. And this gets really dangerous for all of us because unknown doesn't stay there. Put it this way, being unknown feels like we're unloved. Like they don't accept us for who we are and what's really going on underneath the hood in our life. And so we ultimately feel unloved. We all want to feel loved, accepted, and embraced. But if we don't grow in listening and we aren't feeling like we're being heard, we can't be loved well and we can't love well. I love what author David Osberger said. I read this years and years ago. I'll never forget it. He said, listening is so tied to love. Pick up what he says here. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. Being heard, being listened to is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. To be loved is to be heard and to be embraced and to be listened to. It's where the bond of trust really happens, you guys. I want to challenge us as we're growing to be relational artists in the relationships that matter the most to us, to become people that listen, that hear, that are present in our conversations and in our listening to our partners and our kids, because it matters so much. It matters on how they'll receive love. And we all know this, that if they feel like they receive love, it will change the trajectory of their lives. And this whole idea of listening is something that is deeply woven into the scriptures. And in maybe a surprising way, it's deeply woven into the character of the God revealed to us in the scriptures. You see, in the world of the ancient Hebrew people, in the ancient world, thousands and thousands of years ago, there were lots of different cultures and societies that had different versions of the gods. And these, I'll call them lowercase gods, that these different cultures and societies worshiped, they were unpredictable, they were capricious, they were violent, they were always talked about as the overlords looking down at the noisy neighbors on planet Earth that were just seen as a bother. The only time that these gods saw people that weren't seen just as a bother is if they could be enlisted to help them with their work, which is usually war and violence. But this is the way that the gods in so many different societies saw people as just a nuisance or just a tool for them to accomplish their violence and to accomplish their conquest. That was the water that ancient people lived in. But enter into the story, the God of the Bible, who tells us in stark contrast that this God, the God of Israel, the God of the Hebrew Scriptures, our Old Testament, was different. And we see this quickly in the story in Genesis chapter 16. There's a couple, Abram and Sarai, who've been promised by God that they're going to have children. They're going to have not just a few kids, they're going to have so many kids it's going to be like looking up at the stars in the sky. But problem is, after years of experiencing infertility, God's not coming through on his promise in their timeline, so they want to take their story into their own hands. And so Sarai comes up with this idea to get Hagar, who is a servant or a handmaiden of Abram, to sleep with Abram to produce a child, trying to force God's hand. Maybe it needs to come through this servant, this handmaiden, to make this happen. And so Abram listens to his wife, and chaos just ensues because Abram does get her pregnant, and Hagar is now pregnant with a child that's not Sarai's. And Sarai, of course, does not handle this well. There is bitterness and contempt and hatred toward Hagar and her unborn child. So much so that Hagar and the unborn child, they flee from all of their security and they go out in the wilderness and they're all alone, feeling like nobody could be with them. No one hears their cries. Nobody is going to witness to their pain and their sorrow and their anguish. But in Genesis chapter 16, we're introduced to the God who hears, the God who listens to our cries and our sorrow. God sends an angel of the Lord, and this is the message from the angel. You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. Ishmael means God hears. So they're crying, they're groaning, they're weeping alone as they've been mistreated, as they have been hurt. God says that you're going to have a son, and it's going to be the name Ishmael. God hears. And ancient Jewish rabbis and sages say this is the very first name that was given to God in the Bible by people. And these ancient Jewish rabbis said the name comes out this way in Hebrew, El Shema, the God who listens. See the contrast between the other gods of these other ancient societies where God just saw them as a bother and something to be squashed or just be used? This God listens to the cries and the sorrow of his people. We move forward to the next book of the Bible in Exodus, and we see that God's people have grown into a nation, but now they're a nation of slaves under the foot of the evil empire of Egypt and of Pharaoh. And for generations, we're told some 400 years, they've been placed into hard labor, not able to live and worship in their homeland or to live and worship as they were called to live because of being enslaved. But in Exodus 3, the tide begins to turn because God speaks into the story. And we see again this God who hears, this God who listens, and this time he listens to the cry of the oppressed. We're told this in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. This is God kicking off a rescue mission to bring an exodus out of slavery and out of oppression for his people. But he begins by saying, I have heard my people crying out. And this is a different Hebrew word here, this idea of crying out. This is the cry of the oppressed. It's actually this ancient Hebrew word underneath the English in our Bibles is za'akah. Za'akah. Is everybody awake at the 9 a.m.? Can we say it together? Za'akah. I'm going to do one more time on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Za'akah. Yeah, you sound good. Not too much everywhere. It's the cry of the oppressed. And again, notice that God hears this. And he's going to be sprung into action to rescue his people because they've been mistreated, they've been trampled over, and they've been people that have experienced injustice. And so he is sprung into action to do something about it. And again, notice the contrast between the God revealed to us in the scriptures and the ancient gods of other societies around the same time. I mean, these gods, like they were the ones causing the injustice. These gods, these little lowercase gods, were the ones that were trampling over people and just they were part of your pawns in my story. You're just here to get hurt for my cause. But this God is the God who listens and hears the cry of the oppressed and is sprung into action by compassion to do something about it. We move forward into the New Testament and we see in visceral, physical form the God who listens, the God who hears in Jesus. Like this is the God who hears. This is El Shema as a human being in Jesus. And we see him just moving and continuing the story from Genesis and Exodus, but saying it in a way that's so clear for us to understand and for us to see. You guys, let me just say this as an aside. If you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. If you want to know what God cares about, look at who Jesus cared about. If you want to see what it looks like to be fully human and to thrive as a human being, look no further than Jesus, because you'll see it in beautiful 4K, 8K, perfect resolution. And we see Jesus is this El Shema, the God who listens, in person. We see Luke chapter 18. One of the gospel writers, Luke, he was a doctor, and so he was known for taking meticulous notes and details. And he writes down these details around this story as Jesus and his crew are headed from Jerusalem to Jericho. In Luke chapter 18, we see this. As Jesus approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. A couple things here. We're introduced to one character in this account. He's a blind man sitting by the roadside begging on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. Now, Archaeology shows us this, that this is like a narrow path. This is like a corridor that like only like 2 rows of people could go by, one lane going this way, one lane going the other way. And this is a guy who is begging there to get some sustenance, to get some pity, because he knew there would be some traffic there. But we got to say that there's got to be more traffic than usual, because this guy is asking, this blind beggar is asking, what is going on today? It is so packed. They told him that Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And you can just imagine for a moment that this guy's like, okay, oh my gosh, like this could change everything for me. This could change everything if I could just get a hold of this Jesus. Lots of people are going to be near Jesus, and I'll be close to Jesus, and I can call out to him. And this is exactly what this blind beggar does. He called out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Now, a couple notes here, because I get asked about this from time to time. Jesus, Son of David. Why don't they say Jesus, Son of Joseph and Mary, right? And this is really, really important, because David was not his father. But this was this blind beggar calling out that Jesus was the Messiah. Son of David was a messianic phrase for the king who was going to come and bring the kingdom of God to bear on earth, the Son of David. So this was this guy saying, I believe that you are the Messiah, the one who's going to come to make all things right. I need you, Jesus, to have mercy on me. He calls out for Jesus in this hustling, bustling crowd where I'm sure there's so much commotion and so much noise going on. He calls out to him. And the crew around Jesus and the crowd, this is like got to be so annoying and so off-putting. We're told this in the very next verse. Those who led the way rebuked him, like, shut up, will you keep it down? Told him to be quiet, but he would not be stopped. He was undeterred. He shouted all the more. He said, Son of David, have mercy on me. This might be my only opportunity, my only shot to have my whole story turned around so I'm not thrown away. This is all a Hamilton message today. I don't know what happened here. But this was his chance. This was his opportunity. And so he just would not be deterred. He was not going to be stopped. He shouts out louder and louder and louder. And what happens next, I don't want us to miss this, because this would be awkward. This would be something that we would not tend to do. But Jesus flips the script again on what truly human looks like and what it looks like to be a relational artist. After the shouting continued, we're told this in the very next verse. Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him. Jesus allowed himself to be interrupted on his path to Jericho. And he stopped and he goes, okay, we're stopping this whole train. I know we got a lot of people behind me and a lot of people in front of me. We're stopping the whole caravan down. I've got to meet with this guy. He's interrupted. I hate being interrupted. How about you, right? Like, I got things to do, things I got to accomplish, people to see. I've got to move some things forward. I hate being interrupted. Like, it's one of the things that grinds my gears more than anything is like when my day is thwarted by some unexpected trivia that falls in my lap or my inbox. And I think often the last kind of face that I bring to the world when I am being thwarted and I am being interrupted is compassion. But yet Jesus, like, he's got to stop and see this guy. And this is a pattern for Jesus. Don't miss this. Some biblical scholars believe that over 35 times in the Gospels, these 4 biographies of Jesus' life, he's interrupted. And almost half of all the miracles that Jesus performs is in the middle of that interruption. Jesus stopped. He allowed himself to be interrupted, and he needed to see this guy who was causing this commotion. And we're told this next. When he came near Jesus, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And like, can we just be real? Like, this causes lots of different issues and problems for us as we read this. Like, Jesus asked, what do you want me to do for you? As this blind beggar is looking off into the other direction, not even knowing where Jesus' face is. Like, are you serious? Captain Obvious. Don't you know that this guy wants to be healed from his blindness? What are you talking about, Jesus? And that causes problems for others of us who might struggle with the divinity of Jesus. You're like, oh, here it is. Jesus doesn't really know everything, and he must not be divine because he asked this guy a question. Why would Jesus ask a question? But again, this is a pattern of Jesus' life. You know, Jesus was asked so many questions in the Gospels, and he only answers just a few of them directly. We think of Jesus as this content machine of just always spouting out knowledge and information, but Jesus engaged in conversations, and he engaged his curiosity by asking questions. Jesus was asked 183 questions in the Gospels. He only answered 3 of them directly. Jesus asked 307 different questions in the Gospels. It's what he did. This is what Jesus does. He asked this question to enter into this guy's story. What do you want me to do for you? This is him not like needing a lifeline. This is Jesus letting himself be interrupted. And he says, I don't want to assume. I'm going to enter in. I'm going to listen. I don't want to judge. I'm not going to interpret. I don't want to predict because that diminishes your dignity and your humanity. I want to enter into your story, look you in the eyes, and ask you, what do you want me to do for you? This is powerful, and this is something that is so unnatural for us to slow down and actually ask the question that instead of just guessing or interpreting or predicting, Jesus enters into this man's story. And the man replies, as you could imagine, he says this, Lord, I want to see. I want to see. I want to see, maybe for the first time we don't know, or I want to see again. And again, we're always drawn to the physical aspect of this. And of course, physical blindness was a really big deal and would always be a really big deal. But you got to notice there was an exclusionary aspect to this illness or this problem of blindness. This is a man who could never go to trade school, could never work. He was not allowed to go to school and learn. He was illiterate because there were no resources for him. He was excluded from the religious activity during the time as well because there was this superstition around the ancient world that said, well, if you're blind, then you did something really evil and sinful, or your parents or your grandparents did. And so, yes, this man is asking, he's like, Lord, I want to see, but underneath of this, I can just imagine that he's also saying, Lord, I want to be seen again. I want to be seen. I want to be included. I want to be embraced. I want to see and be seen. I want to be restored again. Son of David, have mercy on me. I want to see and I want to be seen. I think he only draws that out because Jesus slowed down to ask him and to speak to him. And then Jesus responds. Jesus said to him, receive your sight. Your faith has healed you. Your trust in me, you knowing who I am and you needing me, man, it has healed you. Immediately, he received his sight and followed Jesus, praising God, but there's a multiplication effect to it. He's not just following Jesus and praising God, but when all the other people saw it, they also praised God. They saw a new glimpse of what it looks like when the kingdom of heaven crashes into earth, into a person's life. And you guys, this all happened because Jesus was willing to be interrupted. Jesus was willing to slow down and enter into this man's story and to say, you are more than the label that's been attached to you of being a blind beggar. You are my beloved son, and your faith has healed you. This only happens because Jesus listened and he met this man right where he was. This is next level, the art of communication, you guys. And Jesus gives us a master class. He is El Shammah, the God who listens and hears in human form. My challenge for us today, as we come back to our world from the world of Jesus, my challenge for us today is to find ways that we can reflect and imitate this way of Jesus, this El Shammah. How can we grow in our communication in the way of Jesus, the kingdom way of Jesus in our lives? So I just want to give a shout out here. These last couple of things, they're things that I learned years ago reading a great book called Emotionally Healthy Relationships by Pete and Jerry Scazzera, who used to lead a church in New York City. And here's some practices I want to encourage you to embody this week as you grow in the art of us. First one, in your communication, I want to challenge you with this. Give your full attention. Don't just physically be there when you're talking to someone and they're talking to you, but be there mind, body, and soul. This is such a unique challenge to us as we have these supercomputers in our pockets and our watches that are connected to the internet and buzzing all the time, and we're hit with notifications every step along the way. But great communication, the art of great communication, it begins when we actually are present with somebody. I mean, Jesus embodied this to us in the way he came to earth. John kicks off his gospel, his biography of Jesus, poetically telling us about Christmas. And he says this about Jesus leaving heaven. Jesus, the Word, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Eugene Peterson would interpret this and say that God moved into the neighborhood. He didn't just like hit up an Airbnb for like a weekend or for 33 years, but he moved into the neighborhood. He was with his people, fully incarnationally with us. Am I the only one that struggles with this, to truly be present in the places that I am with my spouse, with my kids, when I'm sitting across the table with somebody at a coffee or a meal? Like, it's so easy for us to be distracted. But I want to challenge us to grow in this together, to fully move into those moments and to dwell in those moments the way that Jesus came to us. Some of the practical ways you can do this is by putting your phone down, putting it in a different room. Dare I say, no tomatoes. Turn it off for a few minutes. Take off the watch, turn off notifications. Make sure that you can't be distracted. This communicates that you are giving your full attention. Be there with them. Don't just be present. Here's another one, a lost art. I think COVID has taken this away from us, but this is something that just grinds my gears. I'm starting to feel like a real old man around this. But like, man, give them the dignity of eye contact. When someone is sharing a story, when somebody is speaking and you're around a circle or you're around a table from them, look them in the eyes. Now, don't be creepy. But stop glancing down, stop typing. Like, give them the dignity of they are speaking and I'm fully present, listening to you. Give them full attention. Dwell in those moments. They will feel loved in a way that they wouldn't if you were just half there, half someplace else. Got a fantasy football draft. Whatever that might be. Next practice for us. Step in to the other's shoes. Empathetically listen to them. Consider life from their corner of the universe. Consider life from their experiences. To empathize with them in their stories when they're sharing with you. Embody the story by listening to them and growing in empathy. Again, we can learn this from the way that Jesus lived and how Jesus empathizes with us. The author of Hebrews describes Jesus as our high priest interceding between God in heaven and all of humanity. And we're told this, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Jesus, he gets you in a real, visceral, blood and sweat and tears way. Everything that you've ever experienced, Jesus understands it. And there's a power to that. For us to sit and empathize with others grows our bond of connection with others as well. So get interested and ask questions. The things that your partner, the things that your kids are interested in, lean into it. Don't just, oh yeah, but lean into it. I'm telling you, I know more facts about Shadow from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe than I ever thought I would know. And I'm learning all the time about what kind of shoes he wears and how he hovers, he doesn't really run, all these kind of things. But like, lean into it. It's how we empathize and connect with others in this. If you're parenting, man, don't check out on the details. If you're married, don't check out on the details. Ask questions and get interested in what they're interested in. And maybe if you want to take things 401 level, real high-level art stuff, start practicing this phrase. If I experienced what you did, the way you did, I would probably see things the way that you see things. Think about what this phrase can mean for people you disagree with, for people you can't understand where they're coming from and you think they're loony or whatever it might be. Imagine if you said this, but you actually believed it. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with where they land, but think about how it brings you closer to this person, unless it's different than just thinking they're crazy. If I experienced what you did, the way you did, I would probably see things the way that you see things. This is not pop psychology. This is the way of Jesus, you guys. This is how we empathize with others. This is how we grow in empathetically listening to the people that are in our most vital relationships. One last practice for us. Listen without judgment or interpretation. Oh, I hate this one so much. Because I'm so good at listening and trying to interpret and trying to think like, what do they want from me? What do I need to say? Or I'm judging about, you shouldn't have made that move. Oh, if you wouldn't have made that move all the way back there in paragraph 1, sentence C, then none of this would have happened. Like, we're so quick to do that. Or we get into like perpetual fixer mode where we're like, oh, I'm just listening. I'm like, you should have done this. And next time you should do this. And you're going to fix things. I am so guilty of this. I'm not one who slows down, but I'm one to think last and speak first. But again, we get some wisdom from Jesus' half-brother in this. When he writes in his New Testament letter, he says this, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak." He's quoting the Proverbs here. This is a different pattern. Quick to listen, slow to speak. We are so quick to speak and hot takes and interpret and judge, and we are so slow to receive and listen. It's a different way of us doing this in our relationships. It's where we don't come in as perpetual fixers, but we come in to actually hear. Sometimes at the end of the day, when my wife and I have a few moments and I ask her about her work day, she'll start telling me about something, and I'll get into that fixer mode really, really quick. And a couple years ago, she stopped me at one point when I was in like the middle of my 3-point plan to fix all of her problems with my genius, he said sarcastically. She goes, "Hey, I don't need you to fix it. I need you to just listen to me." And I'm like, oh, well, that's no fun, but okay. But that's what she needs. And you know what? And the shoes are on the other foot. Like, that's what I need. That's what we all need. We listen without guessing or predicting, interpreting or judging. We're just there to actually listen and hear them. It's a lot like love. I love what German theologian Paul Tillich says. He says this: the first duty of love is to listen. First duty of love is to actually listen. For us, in our most vital relationships, for us to grow in the art of those relationships, man, we got to be great listeners. I mean, think back on your most important relationships, man. When you first started dating, when you first met, some of those first dates were just you listening to the other person. You were in every detail. You were in lockstep with them. That's the first duty of love, and that's where the love was really sparked and that bond was really sparked. But time passes, and it's really easy to just like scroll nod, and it's not going to take us where we want to go. And I just want to encourage you with a little bit of a warning, a little bit of a challenge as we move forward. It's what we talked about earlier in this morning. If you stop working on your relationships will stop working. My friends, don't check out. Re-engage. Listen. Empathize. Step into their shoes. Slow down. Don't try to fix, judge, or interpret. Just be there with them. This is what it looks like. To practice the art of us in relationships. This is what it looks like to thrive, is to keep working on it. So this week, let's check back in. Let's lock back in. Let's hone back in on what makes our partners, our kids, tick. And let's stay there, because we know the quality of our life determines on it, and the quality of their lives determine on it too.